Amidst all of the hype and excitement for the Nintendo Switch 2, the successor to the Nintendo Switch, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. What if they still release a Switch Pro? Let's talk about it. Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Games. Today, I want to talk about the crazy idea that in 2024 or even 2025, Nintendo may opt in to release a Switch Pro instead of a proper successor to the Nintendo Switch. I know that sounds crazy. It feels like the Switch Pro is the product of a bygone speculation era. Back in 2021 and even in 2020, people were running rampant with Switch Pro speculation, a more powerful Switch that can run games in 4K, but isn't a proper successor, not the next generation device, something more of a stopgap like the new 3DS was or the PS4 Pro was for the PS5. What if Nintendo decides to release something more like that in the 8th year of the Switch's life instead of an actual successor? And for the record, I'm not necessarily saying I think this is what will happen, but I do think it's an interesting idea because there's actually a lot to back it up potentially just based on the recent financial data that Nintendo released. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I've been very anti-Switch 2, not because I don't want the console. I would love if Nintendo released any new hardware. Look at this. Of course, I want more Nintendo hardware and more Nintendo games that look better. Obviously, I want that. However, I've been looking at it very rationally and very logically, and if you look at their sales data, if you look at their messaging, if you look at how the Switch is doing, there hasn't really been enough of a reason for them to release a new console. And with this recent news from their financial investors briefing, it seems even less likely than I thought that they would release something new so soon. A lot of people were expecting late 2023. That goalpost has then shifted to early 2024, and now I'm seeing a lot of people say late 2024, but I know you people keep moving that goalpost. But why release a Switch Pro over a Switch 2? Well, with the Switch 2, that implies exclusive software, like a substantial amount of exclusive software, like killer titles that make you buy the console, like a new Smash Bros. Game, a new Animal Crossing game, and most notably, which we'll be talking about in this video, a 3D Mario game, which a lot of people are expecting to be a launch title for the Nintendo Switch's successor. However, if you look at the financial data and you look at how the Switch is doing versus other Nintendo home consoles, or even handhelds, you can slice it any way you want, Nintendo only ever releases a new console when the current console starts declining. In the case of the Wii and even the 3DS, that decline is pretty rapid. And while I know the argument is that Nintendo needs to release something new while they still have momentum, my argument would be, yes, they should definitely release something before it gets to like Wii territory, where the Wii sales were cut in half by the time the Wii U came out, but the Switch is still doing better than it was in previous years. I know that's hard to believe, but if you read through their financial information, that is just fact. The hardware is selling better than it was in 2022. The software, first-party software, is selling better than it was in 2022. Actually, first-party software for Nintendo Switch is almost at an all-time peak, only behind the year that Animal Crossing New Horizons came out, and of course, everything was inflated at that time. After that, in 2021, it was a bit of a reset point, and since then, there's been a steady increase every single year. The momentum the Switch has right now is kind of crazy considering it's in its 7th year, and while yes, by the end of this fiscal year, the Switch hardware might sell a little bit less in 2022. I completely understand that. The first-party software is definitely up, and hardware is maybe by the end of this year, like I said, it'll be a little bit down. It has not declined even to the point remotely that the Wii or the 3DS had. So while I understand the idea of releasing something new to keep that momentum, I don't think it makes sense to release a new true successor to the Nintendo Switch, specifically when your first-party software is selling that well. Why would you handicap that? It's not like the Wii when Skyward Sword came out and there was 100 million Wiis out there or close to it, and Skyward Sword sold 3 million to, you know, disappointing sales, or any Wii game in that time frame that just wasn't selling right, or any 3DS game in 2017 that sold poorly. No, first-party software on Switch, even remakes and ports, are selling like brand new games, breaking records. It's crazy. Just to put it all into perspective, and I really want you to think about this when thinking about whether or not it makes sense for Nintendo to release a new successor to the Nintendo Switch next year that has exclusive games like a 3D Mario, like everybody's been saying. Think about this for a second. Starting in 2021, almost every, really starting in 2020, but we'll start with 2021. Starting with Metroid Dread, pretty much every major Nintendo franchise, with a few exceptions like Fire Emblem, has had a record-breaking success. Metroid Dread is the best-selling Metroid game. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is the best-selling Kirby game. Splatoon 3, not the best-selling Splatoon game yet. However, it broke the record in Japan for fastest-selling video game ever. Only then to have that same record broken again by another Nintendo game, being Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which is currently the third best-selling Pokemon game, though that will soon surpass Gold and Silver, and potentially even Sword and Shield, making it the second best-selling Pokemon game. And then into 2023, we had Tears of the Kingdom, which was the fastest-selling Zelda game. Then we had Pikmin 4, which was the fastest-selling and best-selling already overall Pikmin game. And then Mario Wonder, which is the fastest-selling Super Mario game ever. That is insane. For a console that is in its 7th year, why would they kill that? I understand, like I said, I want to make it very clear, I understand the idea of keeping that momentum into the next console. However, when momentum hasn't even started to wane when it comes to first-party software at all, why would they kill that? Because I promise you right now, if they release the next 3D Mario exclusively on the Switch in 2024, it would probably break that Mario Wonder record again. And honestly, Metroid Prime 4 will probably be the best-selling Metroid game. And that'll be a Switch 1 game. Same thing with Pokemon, the next generation, which I know that sounds crazy to expect 3 generations on one console. Why would they not release it on the Switch 1? There's a good chance it would break records again. Like, there's no reason for a reset point right now. I know that we're used to the idea of a console generation being 5 or 6 years, but honestly, based on how well the Switch is still doing, it just doesn't make sense for that reset point to be happening right now. If there was a dip in software sales, and if there was a more substantial dip in hardware, I could see it, but right now, there's nothing suggesting it. Which is why I've kind of thought about this a little bit, and I was like, maybe a Switch Pro would make more sense. There are obvious caveats to this, but I was thinking about it, and if Nintendo wants to keep the Switch 1 going until 2025, or I'm going to say the scary word here, even 2026, which I don't think will happen, but all for the sake of argument, right? If they want to keep it going that long and extend this life cycle, which they've kind of already said, actually, they had that slide in their investor kind of earnings slides. They said, quotes, "We will continue to release new titles and content for Nintendo Switch without being bound by the traditional concept of the platform life cycle." To me, I read that as Nintendo and Shintaro Furukawa directly saying this console is going to last longer than it typically does. So to me, when I read that, I think, okay, maybe a Switch Pro does make sense if you look at the fact that, yes, Switch hardware will probably be down in 2024. And that's going to happen. But a way to boost that would be a Switch Pro. And maybe the Switch Pro has a couple of, let's be honest, not super important exclusive games. Like, I think of something like a Xenoblade Chronicles X. It'd be a little weird for them to make that exclusive to a Switch Pro, but that's an inconsequential enough game where the people that want to buy it would buy it anyway, and it'd be fine. But releasing a 3D Mario game exclusive to new hardware at this point in time literally makes just zero business sense. There is no reason to do that. But by releasing a Switch Pro, you get renewed interest in the hardware. People will shut up a little bit about how underpowered it is. Maybe you get some upscaled 4K stuff going on there. Switch games run a little bit better. Third-party games start looking a little bit nicer. Maybe it can run Call of Duty, right? Maybe it's that kind of thing. But I think it being a proper successor with a ton of killer AAA exclusives, that happening in 2024, I would say there's less than a 10% chance of it releasing in 2024 at this point, just because if you look at everything that's going on with the Switch, there's just, outside of rumors, there's nothing to suggest it. If you look at financials, if you look at the game software lineup, if you look at what they're saying to their investors, which, by the way, they can get into a lot of trouble for lying to investors. If you look at all of these things, there's nothing suggesting it's happening anytime soon. So an easy way to get that renewed interest, like I said, in the hardware would be some sort of Switch Pro in late 2024. Of course, I already know what's going to happen. Let's say this theoretically does happen, which I don't really necessarily think it will, but let's say it does happen. People are going to say, oh, I was right. I knew the Switch Pro was real. I predicted it back in 2021 and said it would have exclusive games, but here we are 4 years later, but I guess it's real now. I already know people are going to be like, oh, I was right, when that's not what you were predicting at all. People have been predicting a proper successor to this thing with exclusive games, and that's just not going to happen in 2024. Maybe if first-party software wasn't reaching record-breaking sales, sure, I could see it. But considering that Nintendo currently has upward momentum in that regard, I don't see a scenario where they completely cut that off and alienate that many people. It's not like it was with previous consoles. People always bring up the Wii and how they waited too long. That's not what's happening with the Switch. Switch software is selling better than it ever has. If it was down like the Wii was, or like the 3DS was, I could totally understand it. Or of course, like the Wii U was. God knows the Wii U needed help. If it was even comparable to any of those things, I could totally see the argument for a new Switch console coming out very soon, a new successor to the Switch. Let me be very specific with that wording. But since it's not down, an actual successor doesn't really make any sense right now. However, like I said, a Switch Pro, give that renewed interest, boost hardware sales a little bit, and yeah, maybe have a couple of less important exclusives to it to really kind of bolster that lineup a little bit and make it feel like a more of an event. Or at the very least, some sort of new model could release next year, maybe a Switch Lite OLED, although the Switch Lite doesn't really sell that well anymore anyway, so probably not that. Something new next year to boost hardware sales even more and carry them through next holiday until what I still think will likely happen is an early 2025 release for the Switch 2. But I could totally see something releasing in 2024 that is not a successor, that does kind of help pad out that lineup a little bit and boost hardware sales, so it's not just a drastic dip like a lot of people seem to think is currently happening, but that's just not the case. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think of my idea of a potential Switch Pro returning? Somehow the Switch Pro return. It's like that Rise of Skywalker clip of Poe saying somehow Palpatine returned. What do you think of that? Do you think it's possible that we see a Switch Pro next year instead of a Switch 2, a proper successor with exclusive games? I think a Switch Pro that maybe launches alongside Metroid Prime 4, not exclusive to Switch Pro, but just alongside it to showcase it, or even a 3D Mario, makes a lot more sense than a Switch 2. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch news, reviews, discussions, all of that fun stuff. Follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames. And until next time, folks, peace!